Welcome to the FWA review. I'm delighted to be joined by Jonathan Northcroft, the football correspondent of the Sunday Times. Here we are at England headquarters, no less, sat not in the cinema, but of course in the press conference room, where we've just been listening to a rather shy and a little awkward Wayne Rooney. So I have to ask you, from your point of view, what's your view on the decision? He's made it very clear, Wayne Rooney, today. He said, I was asked to come back and actually have this moment, this celebration before the World Cup. I didn't think it was the right time as the team prepared for the World Cup. Now, I actually give him a lot of credit for that, and maybe that will change the views of anyone that has a disagreement with the decision.
Yeah, look, I see only positives in this, and I think anyone who felt this was an ego trip for Wayne Rooney doesn't know Wayne. He's never been that type of person. In fact, he's been a sort of superstar player who's always played for the team, and I think that's part of his personality. I think this is first of all, it's a great opportunity to celebrate a great England career, and we were all, gooey about when it happened for Lucas Podolski when England played in that game in Germany. People were saying, what a fantastic idea, why doesn't this happen to old England players? And then the minute it happens for an older England player, we complain about it. That's the strange country that Gareth Southgate talks about. I think it's great for the younger stars like Harry Kane and Dele Alli and Raheem Sterling to look at this happening and say, well, look, if I have a great England career, I could get this kind of send-off too. This country looks after me.
And it's exactly what he said. Maybe this will happen again. He said he doesn't think this will be a regular thing, but he almost challenged Harry Kane to have this match. Come on, do better than me.
Well, it's not like everyone's had Wayne Rooney's career. I mean, this is recognising the record cap holder, the record goal scorer. So yeah, maybe if that's the level you've got to get to get this game, that's a pretty good incentive to put in front of Harry Kane.
And what's really nice, speaking to any of the players like you have today, a lot of this is embargoed, but speaking to a few young, nervous players, and the minute you talk about Wayne Rooney, their eyes light up.
Of course, you're talking about kids like Jadon Sancho, who probably their first memories are watching Wayne Rooney in 2004. This is an iconic player for this generation, but more than that, it's a guy who's always looked out for younger teammates, has always had a very good relationship with them. He wants to be a coach, Wayne, so he's always tried to do his bit on the training ground to help other players. And for them, a week of training with him, it'll be the things that you can learn in terms of preparation, in terms of mentality. That'll be invaluable for them. And how special would it be for Jadon Sancho to have his first start, but in a game that is of this magnitude because Wayne Rooney's been part of it.
Has it overshadowed Callum Wilson coming into the team? Because that is a fantastic story.
Yeah.
I remember the day, the moment they were promoted, he was injured, couldn't play a part in something he'd been so vital to, has had just too many setbacks and it's been tough. 2 injuries.
Yeah, and it is a great story. It's a story of the perseverance he's shown at Bournemouth, but also the perseverance in his career to even get to the Premier League with Bournemouth. Yes, it has overshadowed it. Is that a bad thing for Callum Wilson? Probably not. It's probably allowed him to come under the radar, bed in a bit more of a quiet environment than otherwise. And I'm sure he'll get his chance. In fact, he'll play more minutes over these 2 games than Wayne Rooney will. This is not blocking someone's opportunity. I think it's good for Callum Wilson.
Yeah, and Wayne Rooney made that point clear. He said to Gareth Southgate, he'll only come on when he's done everything and seen everything he's needed. I had a little joke with him and said, is there a bit of boys' own stuff about this that you wish you could go out and score a hat-trick then and gives Gareth a bit of a headache? He then said, I am scoring goals in Washington, but that's it, I'm afraid. This will be the last time we see Wayne Rooney in English.
Yeah, I mean, he will... Of course, he'll have that little sort of secret desire to go and finish on a high. And he is one of those players that's got the ability to write his own scripts the way Beckham did. I mean, he think the goals he scored in Manchester derbies, think of the comeback with Everton that started really well. I think there was I went to America and spoke to Wayne a couple of months ago. There was certainly a sadness for him in terms of how things ended at Everton. So that was the end of his Premier League career. It just sort of dribbled away a little bit. And his England career had been cut a little bit shorter than he had hoped. So I think this is a really good moment and a good opportunity for him to maybe just end things in more of the way that he'd had dreamt of. And with that in his mind, I wouldn't put it past him to score.
no pressure on his shoulders, and mainly he said he's delighted and honoured, but he wants to say thank you for his supporters, and that's who he's really connected with. You mentioned Manchester Derby, shall we? The Silver Fox. He wasn't really poaching over anything, though, was he? That was a dazzling display.
It was incredible. I mean, it was. What can you say about it's a challenge for us how good City are at the moment. The 44 past goal, some of the control they had of the game, which was a Manchester derby, to dominate a game of that magnitude is almost unprecedented in that fixture. I felt this City team's better than it was last year, and one of the ways in which it's better is it's raising its standards even in the bigger games. And I think they've now played Liverpool, performed really good tactical display at a ground they got beaten at last year. This Manchester derby's a fixture they, of course, hadn't won since 2014. They went to Chelsea. They are actually getting better, and that's a little bit frightening for everyone. And Kevin De Bruyne is not even playing.
I know, Kevin De Bruyne is not even playing. I do always have a smile, or is it a grimace when people start talking about Kevin De Bruyne, how much Manchester City will miss him. Have they seen their bench? I don't really think.
Bernardo's all right, isn't he?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. One thing you can also look at, of course, with Pep Guardiola is how much he's improved players. And I was just speaking to Lewis Duncan, asking, is there a bit of a centre-backs union? Because after that performance from John Stones, there's been a lot written about him. How much was that an admirable performance? Oh,
I mean, John Stones is really... It's not all Pep Guardiola. It's played a big part. I think he's grown up as a lad as well. I think Gareth Southgate's been very good for him. I think the trust Gareth gave him, making him the key figure in defence, not the kid anymore, but the key figure, he's really responded to that. I think he's finally putting together that ball-playing ability, but with a real sort of defender's sort of maturity and core. He is now starting to remind me of Rio Ferdinand. I thought the comparisons at an earlier stage in his career were wrong, but he's now matching football ability with elite defending the way Rio Ferdinand did, and still room for him to develop as well. Okay, so United's worst start since 1990. That's a statistic. Jose Mourinho doesn't really believe in those, but I think that was that's a start though.
That was a bit of a retort to a rather mean question about relegation. Can I ask you what you think of Manchester United's performance? Were they just outclassed by Manchester City, out of ideas? Because for the first 20 minutes, there was a derby. Yeah.
Look, there was a point in that derby when it was 2-1, when United had just scored and there were 20 minutes left. And that was a position that Jose Mourinho pretty much wanted to be in. I think he was lucky to get there because the penalty was one of those gifts that you get as but anyway, he'd got to that point. But is that how Manchester United should be playing? Trying to sort of hang in a game, hope for something lucky, and then try and nick it in the last 20 minutes. I mean, that isn't Manchester United. And of course, they didn't have anything like the ability to nick it in that last 20 minutes. They were embarrassed in that last 20 minutes.
What were the words you used to describe their performance?
Tell you what, the word association game, the first word that went into my head there was cowardly. I mean, it might be a big word, but I think Manchester United are a major football club who've spent a lot of money on some very good players and should not be playing a game like that, should not be trying to hang in and steal a game against anyone. That's not Manchester United. They were inhibited. I do think there's a technical gulf as well, despite it's not just all Jose's fault. I would like them to say that. He hasn't been back in the transfer market, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. I think there's a gulf in standards. Talk about the defence. Manchester United's defence isn't anything like the standard that John Stones sets. In midfield, no mobility compared to City. On the ball, not as good as City. So there's various things, but they played below what their ability is, and that is a management problem.
Yeah, and you talk about that ability. We've seen Ashley Young, we've seen Luke Shaw, some players in defence go on, but this is the big argument now, isn't it? Is he really getting the full quality out of his players? Can he blame the transfer window?
It's a bit of both. It's a club that's lost its way. I think the transfer window is a product of that. A club that gives a manager a new contract and then a few months later decides, actually, we're going in a different direction. Maybe we need a director of football. Maybe we need to do something else with transfers, and then doesn't give him the transfers he wants. It's a confused club from the top, but I think Jose hasn't been a disaster, but it's difficult to see where the new ideas are and where the direction is at the moment.
Suggestion today, knockout fear if Jose doesn't get into the Champions League. Knockout stages, he could be gone.
I don't see him going before the summer.
I think that feels quite stable.
Yeah, I think two things are happening. I think there's a huge payoff that he'd be due, which even Manchester United have to think twice about. And I mentioned it. I think there's a desire from Ed Woodward in the top to really assess the club and maybe do something else with the structure. Maybe bring in a director of football or whatever, but not just. Maybe it's like what's happening at Southampton. There's an idea that you don't just fire the coach. You maybe look at the whole thing and then decide what to do. So that's probably keeping Jose sort of safe for now.
Which has been under a player that really did seem to be getting back into form. A lot of support behind him. Daniel Sturridge has been charged with breaching the FA's regulations on betting. He denies ever betting on football and makes that very clear. But this, we believe, is surrounding his transfer move to West Brom in January. The FA have focused on that period in January. Part of the regulation is that players may not pass on information that other people may not be privileged to. Considering what we know and how much information we've been given, how worrying is this for Daniel Sturridge's game?
Oh, it's really worrying. I mean, he's a player that hasn't had much fortune, and well, if he's done something wrong, that's not misfortune. But things have happened at the wrong times for him, and this is happening, as you say, Carrie, at a time he's just coming back to something like his best. He's also out of contract at the end of the season, so it's a wrong time to have this hanging over him. I mean, look, it's really complicated, this one. I'd want to know more about it. I think we all do. Yeah. A couple of things strike me. Previous cases have tended to be about betting on games, on specifically on players themselves doing the betting, and on the results of games or things happening in events, match events. The case, and this doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be about transfer. So I think this is new territory, and it also is people around him rather than himself, which is what we understand, which again is new territory. So maybe a precedent's going to be set here, but I can think of a lot of questions I'd then ask. It seems a hard one to prove, and that's why I say I'd really want to find out a bit more about this. This is not as straightforward as previous cases. Because
what we do know is quite often we're given a heads up on a managerial movement because odds have been slashed because someone has put a large money. So therefore, congruently throughout the years, this has happened.
It has, and so if you know something's going to happen, and you tell your friend, is that wrong? Okay, maybe if that's wrong, if your friend then tells his friend, or the friend's friend, where does it stop? This has surely gone on for a long time in football, but there might be a bit more than meets the eye.
Yeah, it's an 8-month investigation, so we have to appreciate that. I'm sure the Football Association have a reason why they've done such a strong investigation. So we're very careful on what we're saying, but it would be a shame if it does affect Daniel's career. Moving on, I'm moving back to the derby, my face, but we have to talk about this. After that fantastic performance, Sterling taken aside for a bit of showboating. A lot of people have written about this, but isn't that the joy of football or too far? Is it the Jose Mourinho show class and then not show class?
Look, I was an old sort of violent Scottish centre-half, so if I saw someone showboating, I would want to try and deal with it. But it's a joy of football. Yeah. We'd want players to be individual and express themselves, and if they've earned the right, and Man City had earned the right to gloat a little bit in that game, it's up to Manchester United to play better next time and make sure it doesn't happen.
A little note, which is a bit of a look into how Unai Emery's bringing his team together, but actually a note and a bit of a send our best to Danny Welbeck, because at the end of a pre-match ahead of their match at the weekend, they all got around FaceTime, the Arsenal team, with Danny Welbeck, which is a really nice touch, and it proves what a great team they have around us. But also, how cruel is that injury, especially with his contract up? And he'd been coming on the pitch and performing so well. He seemed to be in great shape again.
He really deserves a change of luck, Danny Welbeck. Really, I think that also reflects how highly people think of him. He's one of the most popular players in clubs he goes to. The character he's shown throughout his career to come back from these injuries for that to happen again, I mean, it was a horrible moment, and I think you'd have to be really mean-spirited or a diehard Spurs fan to feel anything other than really sorry for Danny, and we just hope that he can get back quick.
We have to wrap up, but I do want to look ahead to this week, because it is a big week for England. We talk about the USA game, and that's not significant, but Croatia is. And to back that up with a result at home, important in terms of the group, but important in terms of the squad and the depth and keeping consistency for Gareth.
Yeah, and it's been a great year for England. This is the last game of the year. You know, you want to end it in the right way. If England somehow won that group, wow. I mean, it's a pretty good group. What an achievement that would be. If England get into whatever the tournament is, I mean, there is a tournament happening at the end of the year. Yeah. I don't pretend to understand it, but I mean, England don't win many tournaments.
Don't talk to Jurgen Klopp about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it'll be good.
Maybe the club managers will be hoping they won't. But but ultimately what Gareth is doing and the players he's bringing through, Callum Wilson, a very good player that maybe could have come in earlier, perhaps, arguably.
Well, he could have done, and I think what Gareth's now trying to do is he's established a really good template. Well, first of all, he's got the culture right in the World Cup. Then I think he's developed the style of play in the last couple of games, and now you want competition. So, you know, you've now got little battles like Dele Alli and Ross Barkley battling for a place. Callum Wilson comes in to add a little bit of competition up front, and if he can prove himself with Jadon Sancho also now on the scene, suddenly there's options up front, and you've got the centre-half situation with Joe Gomez playing so well, Michael Keane back and putting pressure on Maguire and Stones. So those are the kind of building blocks that Gareth will be looking for, and hopefully these guys will play well against the USA, and then there'll be pressure for selection in this last game.
He is quietly building up from the ranks, and actually if you look at the structure, it's really very impressive. Thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to reading from you throughout the week.
Good, thank you.
Bye-bye.